Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today I got an idea from my Discord server from one of my amazing, beautiful mods, which was to rank the King Artorius spells. Now you guys may know I am a massive supporter of the King Artorius spells. I think that they are all really solid spells and really good to use. So I thought today I would actually kind of rank them, put them on a tier list. Again, I will say this is for PvE. If you're looking for a PvP tier list, the PvP tier list is completely different, and I don't care about PvP. So find someone else. I'm sure another PvP YouTuber has done it at some point. I personally have not, but I would say if you want to know PvE wise, stick around and get into it. So without further ado, enough lollygagging, let's get into the actual tier list. So I actually had to make this one myself because there was, surprise no King Artorius tier list on the internet prior to this. So I made it right here and I put all the King Artorius spells into it. Just a little introduction if you didn't know, if you for some reason haven't gotten to it. King Artorius spells cost 8 pips and are a single hit. You get them at the very start of Chrysalis from King Artorius himself. It is a really solid spell and in my opinion has the coolest spell animation in this whole game. I think it's just really cool, really simple, really clean. So I'm going to rank it and then put them on this tier list from S to F. So let's actually get into it. Starting with Fire. Now Fire's for me was a little bit hard to place because Fire, I would say, is really good. You're definitely going to use it over Ifrit in my opinion. The problem with it is, and this is what kind of makes it a little bit in my opinion, is that its side effect is a stun. And obviously just a few days ago I made a video on why I think stuns are kind of meh. So oh, that bird is really annoying. I'm going somewhere else so that bird isn't in the background. Perfect. Darker ambiance. So the main issue with Fire is obviously the stun. I've gone into in the past why I think the stun is pretty bad, especially around Chrysalis where you're going to stun not a single boss. There is that, but it does do really solid damage, more than Ifrit, and especially with the -90 gone on Ifrit, you're definitely not going to be using Ifrit over this in my opinion. So I would say in terms of usefulness, it's probably a B tier. You know what? No, I'm actually going to put it into A tier. I think in terms of how much you're going to use it on a Fire, it is a really good spell. You're going to be using it as your single target spell most definitely. Obviously, Fire Dragon will lessen its use quite a bit, but I do still think it's really solid even though the stun effects on it. I think what keeps it from being an S tier spell is the fact that the stun doesn't work. If they made stunning, like I said in that video a few days ago, this would without a doubt be an S tier spell, but alas, it is an A tier. So let's move on to the Ice King Artorius. Ice King Artorius is a bit strange in my opinion. Now it is solid damage. You are going to be using it as the single hit spell for ice in your deck. The only thing I would say is that its side effect is just really weird. Its side effect is to give you an extra pip, and this can be useful, but I really don't see it in a lot of cases. Maybe to hit a boss and then set up for the mob or another boss, that could be useful, but it's not super good in my opinion. I think it's like solid, like it's not an awful effect, but I don't see the effect being useful all that much. And as an ice, I would probably, you know what, I'm actually going to put it in a B tier. I think it's a solid single hit for ice. It does 650 damage, which is quite a bit for ice, but it's not like super useful, especially with that side effect. It's just barely a B tier. I think if ice had a better single hit around 8 pips or around that level, then it would be a C tier, but instead it really is the only option for ice for that single hit. So I will put it into B tier where I think it belongs. Next up, we have Storm's King Artorius. And for me, this is probably going to have to be the first S tier. And the reason is just look at that damage. In regards to damage, I think it actually has the highest damage up until Storm Owl. Okay, so it doesn't do as much damage as Storm Owl, but I will say I think you usually get to 8 pips. Much like you would probably use this spell at 8 pips much more than you would use Storm Owl. That's just me though. You know, I'm actually going to move it down a tier. I think because of Storm Owl, that is the main reason why I would put it here. I think if Storm Owl didn't do that solid 200 damage more, I would probably put it in S tier. But I think just without it, I won't. But I will say, this is still a really solid spell. It doesn't have a side effect, but doing a solid 14-15 damage is amazing. 1400 damage is crazy, and that's like higher damage than I think any other spell in this game besides Storm Owl. So I will put it here. I think that this is really amazing. It's the only, okay, maybe if not Storm Owl, there is a shadow spell for Storm, a high tier shadow spell for Storm that does a little bit more damage, but we all know how I feel about shadow spells. I think they're pretty bad, pretty lame. I think this is a solid place. Storm would use it quite a bit, potentially, in my opinion. The only thing maybe is you'd keep Storm Owl in your deck for a single hit, but otherwise it is a really good spell for Chrysalis and beyond. I carry it in my Storms deck. I think it's really good. So let's move on. Next we have Myth, and I know what this is for PvP, and I'm probably gonna have to do the same for PvE. I have severely underestimated this spell in the past, but I do think it genuinely is the best King Artorius effect, and the reason for that is a few. So first off, what Myth's King Artorius does is it removes a ward on the enemy. So if they have a shield, it will remove the shield. Then it does the base 50 damage, which will remove another shield. Then it does 825 damage over time. While this isn't useful for every boss, for a boss that has shields or has, a lot of shields, or if you're duoing with a fire that maybe has detonate, this is a crazy spell. What makes it even better is that you have things like the Trident in Imperia, which has a do damage over time cheat, and Myth, in my opinion, is the only other main hitter besides fire that could genuinely do the Trident in a smooth way. I do genuinely think this is a really solid spell. Okay, see, the hard thing is here is I really do think the fire and storm spells are very comparable to the Myth spell. It's very hard. You know what? I'm actually going to put fires up into S tier, and then I'm going to leave storms down there because of Storm Owl. The only reason why I wouldn't put it into S tier with Storm Owl is because you actually get Storm Owl before you get King Artorius, so it kind of lessens the reason to use King Artorius, but it's still really good. I think that this is fair. I do genuinely think the Myth one is really solid, like really good as a Myth wizard, and it's going to be one of your main hits at around that level, in my opinion, besides Artorius. The only other spell that would be good replacement for it would be Medusa, and the problem with Medusa is that the stun doesn't actually do anything. So that's why I'm going to have to put it here. I think that this is really fair. If you guys haven't tried out Myth King Artorius, or if you've doubted Myth King Artorius, please try it out. It's a really solid spell and really good, and I think it's one of Myth's greatest strengths. Next up, we have Life, and Life's I'm going to have to actually put into A tier. I think Life has a really solid King Artorius spell. It has the heal that you get from it, and it's just a really solid single hit for Life. You're probably going to be using it as the 8-pip single hit for Life. I know that it would be in my deck if I had a high level Life at that level. It's just really solid. I think it's definitely like on the same usefulness tier as the Storms, and it's definitely better than the Ices. Next up, we have the Death King Artorius, and I'm actually going to shift this around a little bit. I'm going to put this is looking really funny. I'm very indecisive. I'm going to put Death and Ice on the same tier because I think that they're both very similar and that they are extremely useful and you would use them a lot, but their side effect is really not good. Like, the Deaths has the minus 50% heal back, which really isn't going to be used on a lot of bosses. Like, I don't think it's ever come in handy for my Death. Like, I don't remember ever thinking, oh wow, this side effect was really useful, and the extra pip just isn't that useful. They both do solid damage, and they both would be used as the 8-pip spell, so I think that they're both like B tier, but they're obviously not as good as the Storms, which does an insane amount of damage, and the Life, which actually has a useful effect. Finally on our list, we have the Balance, and now the Balance I actually kind of struggled to place, but I'm gonna have to put it into D tier. I accidentally put it into F tier. I'm gonna have to put it into D tier, and there's a reason for this. If you're like wondering why, the main reason is that there really isn't a reason to use it. It does have the side effect of the minus 45 weakness. That is useful on most PvE enemies. You're probably not going to though, but Judgment is just kind of blatantly better in regards to damage. Like, if you think about it, 8 pips is going to do 800, plus that enchant is going to take you up to 1100 versus the 900 of this spell. I think it's just genuinely better to use Judgment in almost every case. I don't know when you really would use this over Judgment. Now, obviously, this is like my pretty much final tier list. I think this is where it really shows that it's a PvE tier list versus a PvP tier list. Like, balance would be much higher, ice and life would probably be lower, storm might be lower. This is a PvE tier list. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm interested to know. This was fun to do, considering, you know, I've always considered King Artorius to be one of my favorite spells. I will say though, and you can kind of see, I do consider it to be a really good spell. There is only one that's below C tier, which means one that is below like average or below a solid rank, and that is balance. Just because I do think balance is pretty useless in the grand scheme of things. It's not completely useless, but it's not the best. So let me know what you think. Would you shift any of these around? I imagine some people would. I could potentially see like moving fire out down into A tier maybe, or moving ice down into C tier. One of those, but I think that I'm pretty satisfied with it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I am very interested. But that's it for today. If you enjoyed, drop a like at the sub button. Go support me financially on Patreon if you wish, and join my Discord server. Pretty fun over there. But that is it. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.